Hi, welcome TechFro channel and welcome to my next gimbal review. I'm holding in my hands the Feiyu-Tech G6 Plus. But before talking about specs or anything else, I want you to listen carefully. Internal microphone of the Hero 7. We're listening and trying to hear noise from the motors. Can you hear something? Neither can I. And I think this is a pretty good quality of this gimbal because usually there's a lot of noise coming from vibrations from the motors that go straight to the microphone of the cameras. And I'm going to switch to the external now and tell you that this gimbal is meant to replace 4 purpose-based gimbals because it supports action cameras, smartphones, pocket cameras and DSLRs. Bold decision, but how effective, we'll find out. Alright, let's talk about the Feiyu-Tech G6 Plus, and here are my thoughts based on a few months of experience. This gimbal is not among the cheapest models. Most of the time you can find it at prices between $250 and $300, and it fulfills the claim of being a reasonable replacement of separate stabilizers for different devices, like a smartphone, mirrorless camera, or an action camera, and this might be a super great solution and well worth the money. You have already seen it performing with an action camera. The big advantage is that when paired with a GoPro, you have the chance to use ND filters to make the footage more cinematic, and I will explain more about this in just a few moments. The gimbal is of course compatible with many other action camera models as long as they weigh above 60 grams. We will come back to the footage examples. Let's study first the hardware and see what the G6 Plus has to offer. Here's a quick unboxing to get an insight of the hardware used, and it is so great to see a hard carrying case. This is a must-have for equipment of that type, and great news is that it looks very compact. Inside the case you can fit everything needed, including the mounts. Build quality is superb and mostly metal-based. Parts of the gimbal are similar to the predecessor, the G6, which however is limited to mostly stabilizing action cameras. The G-series are oriented towards the more demanding consumers and partially those of them that have the ambition to become professionals. Although it supports action cameras as smartphones, it is classified on the Feiyu-Tech website as a DSLR-capable gimbal. The main controls are around the power button. There is a nice OLED display, a joystick to control the direction, a multifunctional knob, and even a trigger button for quickly locking or resetting the gimbal. What I truly enjoyed about the G6 Plus is the possibility to adjust the horizon without having to reset it or to use the smartphone app as it is on most of the other gimbals, and you can use this feature for additionally enhancing your shooting style, especially if you deal with product photography. As part of the accessories, Feiyu-Tech count also the battery. It is replaceable, 26650 type and 5000 mAh, another awesome news. And it offers power for up to 9, maybe if you're lucky up to 12 hours, and on top you have a battery status indication during the whole time. Often gimbals have embedded battery and as soon as it wears down, the gimbal becomes useless. Not with this one. There also is a micro USB cable, a smartphone clamp, and an extra mount which is good for most action cameras. I know that you're very interested in the operation, so let's cover the user experience in more details. In short, the G6 Plus looks and feels like a smaller brother of the AK2000, which is more professional grade oriented, but since I'm mostly testing action cameras and more portable shooting gear, I thought that's the one that will make better sense to be reviewed. It of course has some limits. It can make a full panning cycle, however you're limited to just one. Tilting is 260 degrees and rolling is up to 320. Going further with footage and device testing, I've tried a few action cameras and GoPro is with priority. The best news is that you can wirelessly control it. You will probably ask yourself, why should I use a stabilizer for GoPro Hero 7 Black since it has such a great stabilization? Well, there is a very good use case, and it can be important for the more passionate videographers. The Hero 7 stabilization performs very well with high shutter speeds. The slower the shutter, was the stabilization, and some videographers will prefer to use a filter in order to make the shutter speed to be twice the frame rate, and this is where the gimbal comes handy, because the stabilization of Hero 7 Black is pretty bad with shutter of 1/60, and of course purely hardware stabilization is always great, so it will improve any kind of Hero 7 footage, even your time warps. And since there is the smartphone app, you can use the gimbal for awesome motion time lapses. As mentioned, the gimbal allows remote control of some Hero 7 functions. In order to enable this, you have to connect the gimbal to the app, which is super simple and requires Bluetooth connectivity. Then you can select the gimbal, and from the main screen connect the camera, where you will find the Hero 7 menu. And it will ask you to add the Hero 7 Wi-Fi network, and that's it. The great news is that once you establish the connectivity, you will no longer need the app, and each time you power on the GoPro and the gimbal, they will automatically establish communication between each other. I wish that was the case with some other action cameras, but unfortunately not quite yet, maybe except Sony. Cheaper action cameras, such as SJ-Cam, Yi series and so on, are not compatible for remote control, however are fully compatible with the really convenient mounting plate. Hopefully, furthermore updates will extend the support for remote control on more devices, and I noticed that the gimbal will operate well with devices above 50 to 60 grams. If you notice vibrations, there are three possible reasons. First, it may be not well balanced, or some of the knobs might be loose, or the motor strength is too high. Remember that the range of supported devices is pretty wide, and this is why we have to fine-tune the motors when we switch from a 70-gram device to a 700-gram device. Going for heavier options, we take out the smartphone holder, and this is simply awesome. Literally any kind of a smartphone will fit here. The smartphone app has two modes, the G6 Plus with a camera and the G6 Plus with a smartphone. The phone mode is simply amazing, and features are so many that perhaps thinking of creating a beginner mode and advanced mode makes good sense. Of course, there is follow mode, meaning that the smartphone app can track your face and arrange the gimbal to follow your movements. There is again possibility to start and stop recording from the gimbal function buttons, and also to control the focus and exposure via the multifunction knob, and the configuration options on the app are really a lot, and you can pretty much fine-tune anything you like. I was unfortunately unable to run 4K recordings with the Feiyu-On app. It worked only with the native camera app on my phone, but that also gives you wonderful results. Now let's wrap up the test with something more pro-grade. Some common cameras, even mirrorless, might feel well on that gimbal, as long as the weight of the body and the lens do not exceed 800 grams. I tried the Panasonic G7 and have had some remarkable results. I was actually surprised to see a mirrorless camera properly stabilized from a gimbal that seems to be mostly targeted for smartphones and action cameras, but yes, it works. Thing is that if you want to be able to control the camera via the gimbal, it will have to be one of the certified modos. No matter what I did, I was unable to make the G7 controllable, but in the menus you can find a lot of other Panasonic, Canon and Sony cameras, and from what I see online, they all work good. Pretty nice are the presets you can choose from. There are a default modes, and you also have choice for a smoother or more aggressive behavior style. There are some limits, of course, like the fact that due to the size, the part of the G7 cycle is blocked by the electronic viewfinder. We talk about no more than 40 to 50 degrees, but sometimes that can make quite a difference, as you can see. In fact, the more I kept using the G6 Plus, the better I was able to understand the features and config options, and the more I can get out of it. Because of the small size, it can be great for travelers, for vloggers, for photography and videography fans, and sometimes even good for some professionals. At the end, some of the things that I didn't quite like. First of all, they could have used a Type-C port, and that was certainly going to be a great thing to appreciate. Secondly, while the app is really good, I wish there was some sort of a better wizard at the start, guiding you through the first-time setup, like choosing a gimbal mode, choosing whether it will be used with a phone or with a camera, and then, based on the weight of the device you're going to be using, to fine-tune the motors. ultimately the added adaptation setting wasn't too helpful, so in time you'll get used to the operation and get an idea of estimated settings to use. This definitely is a gimbal I can recommend, packing a handful of features, using his bigger brother's strengths at a much smaller scale, and being able to replace most purpose-based devices for a smartphone and an action camera and sometimes a mirrorless device. And although not perfect, the smartphone app is decent, allowing you to fine-tune and configure practically everything about it. If only it was a little cheaper, but we all know that good quality and investments in research have the price, and in fact to get the best possible deal, check the description below the video. As for any questions and comments, you know the thing, I'll be glad to get in touch in the comment section. It's been a great opportunity to present you the Feiyu-Tech G6 Plus. Thank you a lot for watching this. Do not forget to give me a quick feedback using the like or dislike button, and I'm looking forward to see you in the next episode.